freedom. It'll always be freedom.
Welcome to Conversations in Anarchy. As we are getting ready for the 7th edition of the Non Conformist Series, Unleash Your Wealth, Claim Your Freedom, we are spotlighting the visionaries redefining what wealth truly means. And on December 29th and 30th, a powerful lineup of innovators will show us how tools like cryptocurrencies, precious metals, and other assets can radically enhance our lives, not by chasing the next trend, but remembering something essential. Money is a tool, and tools are meant to empower us. So in each episode leading up to the event, we'll be introducing the speakers who are living this truth every day, and I have two of them with me today. So one of them is Miranda Rene Webb, and the other one is Blair. Welcome, guys, to the show. Thank you so much for coming. How are you guys doing today?
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm doing great. I am traveling around Mexico right now. I do want to say a little bit about this event before we get really into this interview. This was kind of a brainchild of mine when I took over the Non Conformist Series this year for the most part. I have long been a person who has said, okay, well, there's problems, yes, but what about the solutions? You know, like, where are the tools? That's why the first one we did was, it was about agorism. It was about practical tools for freedom in general, right? And it was a broad topic. And then we did an art themed one, which was the last one. You can get the replay for that, Expressions of Freedom, because that is, you know, one of the biggest tools and most overlooked tools as far as freedom is concerned. But this one is close to home for me because, as anybody who's watched the Anarchist series knows, I have over the years had a lot of crypto flowing through my hands, and I have, you know, some crypto now, but none of that original crypto that I bought at $35 a coin. So, being Bitcoin, but I knew the whole time that I was buying and essentially selling or working for and selling immediately the crypto that I was using. I was building the ecosystem and the structure of the movement itself. You know, it's not simply a store of wealth. These things are not just something that you hope goes up eventually. They are, but also they are things that we use to really empower and make our lives more free. You know, it's made my life possible as somebody who doesn't have a bank account, you know, or any of those things. I rely on these tools. So for me, this was important to highlight the tools around finances and the tools within them themselves. This is not where you're going to be told exactly what to invest in, but you will get, you know, how to use certain crypto wallets, specifically Edge. You will learn how to integrate crypto payments into your website. That's what I'm going to speak about. And today we have with us Blair, and he has developed this really interesting set of indicators for trading software that bring astrology into it. And it really gives people a different way for looking at why these cycles happen the way they do. It's not simply, oh, there was some good news and now the price is going up, and then there was some bad news and it's going down. Well, what causes those sorts of things? I know a lot of people think there's very woo-woo energy in the financial market, in the astrology markets, themselves, but like, the reality is we can't really control the way things around us are moving. We can only understand them and use them to our advantage.
Yeah, that's a great intro, Miranda. Yeah, thanks for setting that up.
Yeah, no problem. It's why I wanted to come on here today, because I know some people are going to be like, wait a minute, financial astrology, that doesn't make sense. But the reality is it does, you know. Like, I've been watching my partner use these tools a bit and explaining to me what he's seeing. And then I'm seeing myself in real time, and it's not like we can just think of these tools and be like, oh yeah, okay, so the moon's going to be here at this time, or this, there's going to be this eclipse or whatever. And it's not like we can force the market to do what it's going to do, but a lot of times it does follow those cycles, if you know where to look.
Yeah, and
So
maybe I can
since
take that theme and kind of run with it a little bit.
since Miranda, you opened it already. So Blair, would you explain us a bit about what you're doing and how the astrology is involved in your work?
Yeah, happy to. Yeah. So astrology is kind of a loaded word. So let me just kind of unpack that a little bit because I think it has a lot of meanings for different meanings for different people. And honestly, I think what my work is about, it's honestly a little bit closer, it's probably closer to physics than astrology. Um, because I'm not actually an astrologer. I can't sit down with someone and read their birth date and, tell them if they're going to have a good year or a bad year or what their spouse is going to look like or whatever. Um, I know a lot of people that can do that. That's actually not my skill set. I approach the markets and trading almost from a physics standpoint. And it starts with understanding that markets go through cycles of fear and greed, and news is generally irrelevant and all of that. And the question really is like, what drives those cycles? And, if one of the sayings that I kind of like is, the last thing that a fish discovers is water, right? And when we're swimming in this environment, when we're on this spinning rock, flying through space, spinning around a star, right? It's easy to kind of take all that for granted and forget the bigger environment that we're really in, right? And the astronomy and the physics of things is actually very deeply embedded in our physiology, in our calendar, right? A year is one lap around the sun. A month is one lap of the moon around the earth. And Monday is moon day, right? So the astronomical vocabulary has become part of our day-to-day existence and our calendars so much that we kind of take it for granted. So really all I'm doing with time trades is I'm approaching it from that lens. I'm approaching markets from that lens. And I'm asking myself, okay, well, like, what are the mechanisms of action here, right? And I think this is where people get really hung up about astrology, is because they dismiss it because they can't understand the mechanisms of action. It's just far too abstract. It's like, how can, Pluto a billion miles away have any impact on my day, right? So I've identified, it's not me, it's smarter people than me have identified mechanisms of action, and they're pretty well understood. They're, it's the things that give us Wi-Fi. It's EMFs, it's charged particles coming at us from the sun every day, right? That's one mechanism of action. Another one is gravity, right? Like, we see that in the tides. The moon, the orbiting moon, has the power to move trillions of tons of water every day, right? So gravity is another mechanism of action. Electricity is another one that's probably less well understood. You can think of the planets as almost like nodes or capacitors on a circuit board. And as planets come into alignment, that lowers resistance, it completes a circuit, it allows electricity to rebalance between the sun and the planets in the solar system. And that ability for electricity to flow through space is actually pretty well understood. It was it won a scientist by the name of Hans Elfman the Nobel Prize as he discovered these things called Birkeland currents. That's the mechanism that enables electricity to flow from the sun to planets and back, so that the charge is balanced in the solar system. And I actually use that. I've created indicators that display those moments um, when planets are in alignment with the sun in 3D heliocentric alignment. So it's much more physics-based than astrology and woo-woo based, what I do. And so I wanted to sort of lead with that and talk a little bit, make sure that the listeners kind of understand my approach. And it's not really about, kind of sitting down and analyzing, like a birth chart and the way people get astrology readings. It's much more physics based.
So do you
Yeah, I find
have,
that, go ahead.
yeah, Miranda, do you have any comments on that since you are quite good in astrology?
Yeah, so I find that interesting. And I mean, the thing that most people don't realize is a lot of these things, yeah, they come across as woo-woo, but they are in themselves, it's all math and science based. I'm very into human design. And one of the things that makes human design what it is, it's tropical astrology, it's Vedic astrology, it's numerology, it's earth astrology, it's all those things. But it's also quantum physics, that is what's taken into account for that. And I think in general, for most things related to this, that's just because people don't understand it doesn't mean that these things don't have an effect. Every time I bring up Mercury retrograde, for example, there's always somebody that's like, that doesn't exist. Stop blaming planets for your problems. But it's like, well, these things have an effect on technology, whatever it may be, regardless of whether or not we understand that it's happening.
Yeah, no, that's true, and you bring up the different types of astrology that are out there. There's Western, there's Vedic, and I learned just enough about those types of astrology to kind of be dangerous, and then what I try to do is I very much resist silos. Like I'd like to try to find the connections between those different types of astrology versus, sort of embracing the differences. So I'm trying to knock down the walls between them. And I asked myself, what is it that's so important and unique about Vedic? And one of the things that happens within the Vedic astrology tradition is there's a very slow cycle in the Earth's movement. It's called precession. It's basically a subtle wobble in the Earth's orbit, and it results in a movement of about 1 degree every 72 years. Okay, so it's a very slow cycle. And when Vedic astrologers are setting up their sign boundaries, they will roll back the precession so that the boundaries between the signs are as they existed, 2,000 to 3,000 years ago, depending on the style of Vedic that they're using. Okay, that's called an ayanamsha. And I asked myself, why do they do this? Why do they do this? And I'm sort of asking this question from the standpoint of, hey, like, there's obviously value in this. Otherwise, it wouldn't, this approach would not have persisted for thousands of years, right? So what's the nugget of value in rolling back all of this precession? And it has to do with the fixed stars. So often the boundaries between the signs in the Vedic traditions are aligned with fixed stars that are, just bright stars in the sky, like Sirius, the dog star, or Spica or Vega. These are, if you've done any stargazing, you might recognize those names, but those are all very, very bright stars in the night sky. And the Vedic tradition aligns the sign boundaries usually around some of those stars. And so my takeaway from all of that was that fixed stars are important, right? And then, of course, I take that observation and I apply it to what I see in the markets right now. And what do I see? October 30th on the high of the stock market. Okay, so the high in the stock market was that week. We had Jupiter, the biggest planet in the solar system, conjunct Sirius, the brightest star in the sky. So that to me, that's no coincidence, right? Like these are alignments of energy that allow for major cycles to complete or end or renew, and they're important markers. They're important markers in time, and the way I approach trading is I'll take a look at what's happening in the markets around that time, and I'll allow for a potential trend change. So you can't assume there's going to be a trend change just because there's something happening in the sky. You have to be patient and very closely observe price in the days after that major astronomical event. And then draw some conclusions shortly after that. And sure enough, for most of November, we had a correction in the stock markets, and it all started from that major astronomical event with an alignment between the biggest planet and the brightest star. So this is what really gets me interested and keeps me going and motivates me to work really hard to make all of these cycles accessible and visible, is kind of bringing all of this knowledge, which it's just out there. I mean, like anyone with a telescope can see it, but 99.9% of us live in front of our computers. We live in front of TradingView or whatever your trading software is, and it's not accessible. And very often we're making emotional decisions about buying and selling that aren't data driven. And so I'm trying to bring some of that foundation, some of that hidden knowledge, hidden cycles, surface that up to everyone so that we all can make better decisions around managing our crypto and our investments.
I do have a question. I don't know if you're aware of, there's kind of a movement happening in the astrology world, because you mentioned Vedic, to true sidereal. And the whole idea with that is the Vedics, they go the 72 years behind, but the true sidereal people, they run a chart for whatever event it is based off of when that thing happened, what was happening literally where things were. And with that, you have the introduction of a 13th sign known as Ophiuchus, extra constellation, because I think it's Foot's in there. And, in Vedic, normal Vedic astrology and tropical, each sign is like a certain, I forget the number of degrees, but each sign is a certain number of degrees in the circular chart, right? Well, in true sidereal, for example, Virgo is much bigger. Ophiuchus is much smaller because how many days the sun actually can travel through, I wonder if you take that specifically, that sort of approach to it into account at all when it comes to your software.
Yeah, no, I don't. In general, I don't really focus too much on sign boundaries at all because they're kind of arbitrary, right? What I'm trying to do is extract, or identify, where's the major sources of energy in, locally within our solar system, and within the the near outer solar system, and that's the fixed stars, right? And what I'm looking for really is patterns in planets that can drive physical reactions, right? So alignments, for example, alignments from the sun to one planet to two planets to maybe even three planets, right? That allows for charge rebalancing, okay? Alignments between major planets in the solar system and fixed stars. That allows for more charge transfer. Things like just simple lunar cycles. We take it for granted, but just yesterday we had a supermoon. That's a full moon where the moon is at perigee, right? So the moon is closer to Earth than usual. And what happens then? It reflects more energy back to Earth, right? And in addition, there's obviously an oppositional alignment. We've got, the Earth in the middle of between the sun and the moon. So there's a gravitational influence there as well. So that's really the focus of a lot of my research right now. When it comes to sign boundaries and interpreting the meaning of, planet X and sign Y, that's really not part. I mean, I can display it on the chart, but I don't really use it in my day-to-day forecasting. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm approaching this really more from I guess a physics standpoint, and with the starting from the standpoint of hey, the astrologers were right. This science, pseudoscience, whatever you want to call it, has been around for thousands of years. It hasn't gone extinct. There's a reason for that. Okay. Because there's value in it, and it has been effective over many, many thousands of years. And I think the hard science, the Western science, is getting to the point where it can explain a lot of the mechanisms of action of astrology. Okay, so that's where my focus is at, approaching it from kind of the Western science standpoint. And then on top of that, layering modern tooling like machine learning and data science on top of it, so that we can, tease out some of the major cycles and some of the key influencers over these major cycles. So there's a lot of incredible tools available to people today in 2025 that allow us to go very, very deep down this rabbit hole. And that's kind of where I live, in the application of data science and machine learning to stock and crypto market movements, and creating data-driven forecasts based on that.
Okay, let me interrupt you guys for a moment. So before, Miranda, you have to leave. It's going to be really soon. Can I ask you the question, what you going to be talking about on the upcoming Non-Conformist Series?
Yeah, thanks, Laura. Yeah, I'm excited to be part of that, and thanks to the team for extending an invitation to me. So, yeah, I'm going to be talking a little bit about, more about time trades. This is really the website and trading view scripts that I've created over the last 5-6 years, using that data-driven philosophy. Some of my latest research discoveries there that involve identifying this confluence of cycles that are influencing market behaviors. I'm going to be maybe doing a few little demonstrations of, I guess, how it works, and the structured approach that I use when I approach any new coin or stock, and analyze it to really sort of get a sense of the framework within its trading and what are the key influencers over its market. But I mean, markets are hard. Trading is hard, right? And it's as much a psychological journey as it is a technical one, right? So that's really what I'm going to be doing on that 45-minute, 60-minute presentation for the Non Conformist Series. Probably going a little bit deeper than what we're talking about here, with a few more hands-on demonstrations and examples of how I use the tooling that I've created to create an edge.
And if we think about, for example, like different levels of experience of the viewers on the trading market, is your systems are your systems good to go also for the total beginners, or is it good to have some knowledge on the trading markets before one kind of approaches your time trades?
Well, you've got to get experience somehow, right? And I think it's important that when you're a beginner, and I welcome beginners. I encourage beginners to take a look at the tooling and uh, gain some experience through maybe by paper trading at the start. But I mean, trading at the end is a psychological journey, and it's very important, I think, for people to um, start slowly, gain some confidence. Okay. Because there's a lot of ways, and it's hard, especially when you're starting. It's hard because you haven't really found your style yet, right? And you haven't really found what works for you. Time trades is what works for me. I've decided to share it on the market. It may not work for the beginners. This is one of the reasons why I like to offer it, at a relatively cheap price. It's $60 a month, right? So people can give it a try, right? And maybe it doesn't work for them, and that's okay. But one of the things to understand is that time trades doesn't make calls. Like, I'm not going to tell people to buy here and sell here. All right. It's a toolkit. And I think it's important that people learn to fish on their own, right? I'm not going to give them the fish, right? So uh, it's a framework to approach the markets, and looking at both axes of the chart, both the time axis and the price axis. When people start trading, often they will go very, very deep on analyzing price and the price axis, but almost ignore the time axis. So what I wanted to do with time trades is I wanted to make all the information on the time axis of the chart more accessible to everyone, so that people can see these hidden time cycles and make better decisions. So, I mean, at the end of the day, beginners are welcome, experts are welcome. It's one tool, it's not a magic bullet, right? And trading is hard, and you're going to have to endure, some losses. And this is why, as a beginner, it's super important to learn risk management, understand um, the risk of the coin that you're trading, and minimize your losses, because those losses can create, lasting damage. So if once you manage your risk and establish an edge, then that edge can take effect over time, right? So sorry, that's a really long-winded answer to your question. But by all means, beginners are welcome at time trades, but time trades is, it's just one part of the puzzle for successful trading.
Miranda, have you yourself any experience with trading in general?
Oh, to be honest with you, I have interest in it, right? But like, I think if there's one thing I know about this world, it's that everybody kind of has their I don't want to say programming, but I can't think of another word right now, of like what they're here on this earth to do, I regularly ask my partner, I like to say he looks at charts while he looks at charts while he looks at charts, because he'll have two charts up on his computer, and then he'll have his phone out with a third chart, and he'll just be sitting there comparing them. That's what he does all day. Other than playing chess, that's what he does. And I do feel really grateful, because I'm a worker bee. I build websites. I do Anarchapulco, everything, basically, not everything, but I do like so much for Anarchapulco. I have other clients that I do random things for. And so I have a lot of respect for trading, because like you said, it is hard. It is not easy. And I do think it takes a certain type of mindset to be able to stare at those charts all day and to see anything other than candlesticks and lines And I'll regularly ask him, hey, like, what are you seeing? What are you seeing in the charts? Because I do have, some crypto that I hold on to. I basically use him as my personal like predictor advisor. And so far it's worked out for me. But he'll show me, and I've seen these indicators that Blair has built. He showed me when he first got them, and he's like, well, I don't remember any of the terminology, but he's like, there's this thing happening here. Do you see it? Do you see it? Well, okay, so this last time this thing happened was this time. And as somebody who's been involved in cryptocurrency since I first heard about it in the end of 2011, and so I've been involved almost since the beginning, getting a hold of crypto by work or something and then selling it immediately to pay my bills. But I've felt all of these cycles. So I know when he says, okay, so the last time this happened was in 2021, I'm like, oh, okay, I can deduce what he's, kind of indicating towards and what he's seeing. And so I personally am not, there looking at the charts myself. However, I do understand them enough to where when he explains things to me, it's not just, some other language. I do think it is more accessible than people realize, but it really requires a mental focus and dedication. And I am very ADHD, and he is very focused. And, that's why my brain doesn't quite work in that way. But I do find it super interesting, and I do like to tune into that world every so often. And then I'll ask him, hey, I have this amount of USDT, and I'm thinking, in which direction should I squirrel this money away for later? Or, hey, do you see a correction coming, and maybe I can flip some of this money I have squirreled away into USDT, and he'll give me advice on that, and he'll be able to show it. So it's one of those things where it does take years of really staring to actually make money. I think it's less than 5% of people that try to learn how to trade make their living at it, right? But I do also know a lot of people who work a normal job like I do and have some supplemental income from these sorts of things, It's that short term, what's going to happen in the next month, where things are much more volatile and risky, in my opinion.
So that's also why I feel that the Non-Conformist series are so great, because you are inviting so many different people, and showing other people how it's possible to do things in different ways. But can you reveal a bit from what you're going to be talking about on this edition?
So yeah, mine's going to be, it's going to be two-part. There's going to be the practical side of it, but I also realize I can't fill 45 minutes with telling people how to integrate crypto into WordPress, that doesn't take that much time. But what I can do is I do have many years of, like I mentioned, getting a hold of crypto some way, finding ways to sell it, especially in my complicated situation where I don't have a bank account. So I have years of convincing people to accept cryptocurrency on my behalf. I have years of convincing employers or clients to pay me in cryptocurrency. I have years of finding tools like, I'm trying to remember the name of it, but there was this app back in 2013 where you could use Bitcoin to buy gift certificates. And what we would do is we would use those gift certificates at, for example, Kmart, and we would go Kmart and we would buy the physical gift certificates that they had in the store. And you could buy them for flights, you could buy them for gasoline, you could buy them for other stores that weren't available in that gift card store app, right? And so we were finding ways to spend cryptocurrency directly. And we were also, giving it in tips to people who would accept it. And like I said, that really built the ecosystem, because the reality is people, it's, put money in and money grow and machine go burr, and we have more money. But what makes these projects, any of them, have any value at all is, are they useful? How much does it cost to send $1,000 from China to the United States. How long does it take? And how much surveillance does the government have over that transaction, should they want to have surveillance over that transaction? Or how do you use something like Bitcoin? Because Bitcoin's a public ledger and people give it a lot of crap for that, but it was designed that way because the intention was, if you send, you can put birth certificates on the crypto blockchain. And there are a lot of people who have, and that's how they feel they've registered the birth of their child. Sales of homes, sales of cars. You do need some sort of public ledger to kind of respectfully acknowledge property, and how do you deal with property in a world without government? And that's why all of these systems were created, right? And so that's really what a lot of it's going to be about, is to really talk about, yeah, okay, you can put money in Bitcoin and wait 3 to 5 years, and you're most likely going to have more Bitcoin, or more money, right, that you can cash out. Bitcoin's less like that now. There are other things like Telcoin and Litecoin and even Bitcoin Cash and Xano and stuff like that, where you're seeing more gains in a smaller amount of time. However, these things are just tools at the end of the day, and we really need to respect, like, for me, I don't simply use a cryptocurrency because I think it's going to make me a lot of money. I want to know, is it easy to use? Like, I have interest in Monero, but I don't use it, for example, because it is slow, it is cumbersome, and it is buggy, and it has its issues. And the development team knows these issues, are working on it. I think they can fix them. But there's no reason you should have to, every time you open your wallet, sit there and wait for 15 minutes for it to sync before you can send somebody $10 in Monero. Like, that's not cash to me. So for me, it's about, like, my involvement and what it was like being somebody who, bought Bitcoin for the first time at $35 a coin and spent most of it on my cell phone bill and a bicycle that was worth $100 at the time, to where it is now. And how I think, and that was the point of this whole event for me in general, was I think so many people have lost sight of the tool side of these things. And it's just about, how do I make the money? How do I make the money? How do I make the money? And it's like, well, what are you going to do with it once you have it? Like, how are you going to cash that out into something that you can use? Or if you don't cash it out, how are you going to find somebody who's going to accept your 20 Bitcoin for whatever you're trying to buy, or your, 100 Monero for whatever, like, where are the systems that support these markets? Because they're not going to remain sustainable if you don't have these sorts of systems.
Yeah, I as a total beginner in this, all these things, feel that it's very important for, exactly, if we are looking at this edition's kind of aim to show people these different assets as tools, for the everyday life, so that it doesn't feel like, for many people around me that are not into crypto, it can feel like, oh my God, that's something like either totally so difficult that it's no point even to start, or it's a total scam and it's not gonna lead anywhere and I'm just gonna lose money in this. And that's also why it's no point even to start. and then yeah, I believe that part of the people that are awake and is part of Anarchapulco movement is, like, really have been, as you yourself and probably you as well, Blair, that you have been into, like, alternative currencies and assets for a very long time, and have been seeing and also know you're able to tell others how to better use them and what's actually possible with those assets. But for part of the people that are, I don't know, waking up in one way, maybe in health and philosophy and wellness kind of level, the financial thing might be a bit of a struggle. And and so could you share a bit like how when you were, you know, escaping to Mexico and you basically didn't have anything, you know? So you are one of those examples that it's not like, oh, I'm sure she or he had some money from parents or whatever and had the possibility to invest in these currencies or whatever and had some kind of a wellness behind, but you are actually really the person who had nothing, totally nothing, and you have built yourself up from nothing to something. Could you share a bit about that, if you can?
Yeah, so yeah, and that's really in essence what it's about. You know, I think people think that you need to just be a rich crypto bro to get involved in any of this community. But the reality is, like, the whole thing was I realized pretty early on in my adulthood that if I don't have money, well, I better have some skills. And so I just learned as many things as I could, and I tried as many things as I could. I did permaculture. I lived off grid. I learned how to cook professionally. None of this by school, by the way. The websites, I learned how to do all that on my own. All the things I know how to do, I taught myself because they have that saying that necessity is the mother of all invention. And for me, that was it. It was grow or die. And so when you're put in a situation like that, it really is, how strong are you? You know, I've met a lot of people that have been through a lot less than me that have said that, you know, have given up and completely, you know, not to get too dark, but I think there does need to be an inherent strength to make you have that drive of like, okay, yeah, everything sucks, everything's hard, but I'm going to keep trying because maybe I'm capable of doing something better. I'm still not sure what part of me that is, where that came from. Maybe from my dad. But even still, like, even my dad said, like, most of the stuff that I've been through, he would not have been able to keep going in the same way. So I truly am one of those people who have kind of clawed my way out of hell. And, you know, I'm not where I want to be, you know, still legally not where I want to be. Like, I have my own, you know, health hormonal things I'm working on financially, especially after the last 3 months traveling around. I am not where I want to be. However, when I look back at myself 5-10 years ago, I didn't have any savings at all then. But I took what I've learned just with skills, and I am lucky enough to have had the cojones, the balls, the huevos to fucking go to Mexico because I could not afford to do any of this in the United States. I just simply, it would be impossible, right? I can manage to save and manage to have a little bit of extra despite my difficulties in life. So really, it is some sort of internal fire that has yet to be blown out, that I'm not sure of its source. And it's the people around me and who have been encouraging and who have given me opportunities. Like Anarchapulco has been one of the biggest. I was thinking about that before. Like, before I started working for Anarchapulco, I was making $300 a month. And I was living on that here. Not very well, but I was living on that here. But, you know, I'm not rich in Anarchapulco, despite what some people might insinuate. I'm not making, you know, like hundreds of thousands of dollars per year. That would be ridiculous. We couldn't afford to put on the event. However, I am making enough between the private websites that I build, between the other little side hustles that I have, to live a good life, to be able to travel and see a lot, and to be able to save, to where, like, this recent bull market in crypto is the first one that I've actually since 2012, because I did have 5 Bitcoin, and I watched it go from like, I don't know, $100 up to like $600, and then it crashed down again to like $100. But like, this is the first one I was somewhat ready for, and I did find ways to improve my life as a direct result of this. So yeah, to kind of hint at what you were talking about with that, for the people that are like, well, it's too late, and I can't, like, what's the point ever? All the money's been made, and don't even look at it like that. Look at it as tool. Like, how expensive is it to send PayPal from country to country? How hard is it to send $100 from somebody in the UK to somebody in Mexico without cryptocurrency? And it needs to be looked at as a tool. And when you start to look at it as a tool, it starts to make more sense. And the first step is always to download a wallet and to buy $20 in Bitcoin, and to find somewhere worth sending it to, even if it's to yourself on a different device, and do it. And once you send that first transaction, then it starts to make sense.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is
that's
it
great.
is it so, Miranda, that you need to run now?
Yes, it is. I encourage you guys to keep going without me. I've talked for quite a bit.
We will.
Of course. Well, you guys enjoy. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much for
and
being with us.
yes, it was good. And it was good to get to meet you virtually a little bit, Blair, because I've heard a lot about you from my partner. And I'm very happy that you took the chance to be involved with our event here.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be a part of it. Thanks, Miranda.
Yep, thank you. All right, guys, I'm popping out. See ya. Bye.
Bye. So Blair, is that I'm understanding it correctly? This is going to be the first Anarchapulco event that you're going to be part of.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I haven't been through it before, but yeah, I mean, I'm not like a card carrying anarchist or anything. I'm just a guy that builds a website that helps people make better trading decisions. So I'm sure there's a market for that within the community. And uh, yeah, I may encounter, may be a few sort of like Bitcoin maximalists there that think that Bitcoin's going to go to, $1 million next year. I mean, I'm not one of those. I'm very pragmatic. I don't really have a hard held opinion on Bitcoin pricing specifically, but I do think that next year is going to be a tough year for Bitcoin, just simply based on Chinese astrology. That's it. If you just look at Chinese astrology, Bitcoin is going to be in its enemy year in 2026, starting with the Chinese New Year in February. And if you want to look at how it did the last time it was in its enemy year, just look 12 years ago in 2014. It was not a great year to be long Bitcoin. But yeah, I'm looking forward to being a part of the event.
Yeah, and so does the astrology charts predict the same kind of destiny for the next year to other cryptocurrencies that you are looking at?
Well, it's really just Bitcoin that I've looked at. I haven't really looked at Ethereum. I'm not sure where it is in its Chinese astrology chart or Litecoin. Those are really, I don't really look at too many coins, to be honest. Like, I'm sure there's many people that know much more than I do about different privacy tokens and stuff like that. But I'm not super deep on that. I will look up what I can if there's interest. If a customer says, "Hey Blair, can you take a look at XRP, for example, and take a look at that using the time trades tools," I'd be happy to do that. But I'm not like out there scanning the universe of thousands of coins looking for great deals every day.
Okay, so does that mean that customer can actually ask you to look at specific coin? Is it gonna be like a
Yeah,
prep?
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So uh, Yeah, I mean, time trades is an important business to me. I've poured thousands of hours into building it and developing it. It's been cash positive from day one. People see value in it. Yeah, like any other person in business, I like to keep my customers happy. So if they have a question about something, I will do my best to respond promptly.
Okay. And how old is time trades? So how long has it been working?
Yeah. So I started building it in late 2019, just as a little side project, and then I it graduated to a paid site in late 2022. Yeah, we've seen pretty steady growth in it so far. I'm still basically a solopreneur, so it's really just me doing all of the development and research and marketing and customer service. So yeah, I'm quite proud of this little this little tool set that I've built, and uh, I'm proud because it's delivering results for our customers. And I get lots of feedback from customers about how it's helped them make better trading decisions, and that's really what it's about.
Yeah, I'm sure that's really revealing to get that kind of feedback.
Yeah, it's great.
Um, how did you actually then, since you're not an astrologer, how
Mhm.
did you actually think of looking on the trade market from that lens? Did you inspire from someone, or yeah, how did you start thinking
Yeah, that's a
about?
good question. So it kind of goes a little bit to the origin story of time trade. So when I got started, what I noticed is that the vast majority of traders focused almost completely on price, and they didn't spend a lot of time analyzing the time axis or time cycles. The other thing I noticed is that there were books out there that talked about time cycles, but there was a big gap between the knowledge in the book and implementing it in day to day on your chart, right? So the book talked about things like longitudes of planets, right? And then if I read the book and I decide, okay, I want to trade like this, then there's a huge gap, an implementation gap, right? How do I get the longitudes of planets onto my charts, right? And that really prevents everyone from reading the book from taking action on the good ideas in that book. And I'm not talking about any specific book, but there's a fair amount, there's a lot of them that were written over the last 40, 50 years that talk about timing based on planets. And then there's a huge gap. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to fill that gap with time trades. I want to make it accessible to use planets to time your trades. And in doing so, I made it trivially easy to put the location of planets on your chart and basically implement, we talk about ancient knowledge in astrology. So it's not just astrologers from thousands of years ago, it's people that traded in the 20s and 30s and 40s and that wrote documentation about their techniques. And I've been able to take those insights and create trading view scripts that make them visible on your chart now, right? So there's a famous trader. His name was William Delbert Gann, or W.D. Gann, and he died in 1955. And he was probably one of the most famous traders using the time-based techniques. And he created a number of different tools, but of course, since there were no computers at the time, they were all paper-based. So I've been able to translate a lot of these paper-based tools onto our modern charting software so that that knowledge, that wisdom is now accessible to all of us, right? So, and that's also true for a lot of other traders, many of whom are living today. You know, there's a guy by the name of Brad Cowan who has written some amazing books about trading. So I lean heavily on his insights. So really, I just kind of see myself as a bit of a channel between all the knowledge that's out there that's been created and making it easy and accessible to implement that knowledge, right? So that's really my focus. Along the way, I've invented a few things of my own that complement what, you know, the great work that the masters have created. And, you know, but really what I'm trying to do at the end of the day is help traders fish for themselves, right? I'm not going to tell people to buy here or sell here. I'm going to give them the tools to figure out for themselves and make their own decisions and make better decisions about when to buy and sell.
And what about this artificial intelligence? Your website says that it is on your charts as well. How does it work?
Yeah, so the way it works is it generates, if you can imagine, a giant spreadsheet of like hundreds of different data points about astronomy, okay? Jupiter is at 120 degrees. Saturn is at 148 degrees for every day in the last 50 years, okay? And I've got like, I don't know, 700, 800 different data points of astronomy-based data points. And then what I do is I identify key pivots in the price action of a stock, right? So take Bitcoin, for example. You know, it might have a high on April 2nd and a low on October 20th, and then a high on December 4th. So I identify those highs and lows. They're called pivot points. And then I use the artificial intelligence to look at, okay, what was going on in the sky at those dates, on those dates, right? And then based on what's going on in the sky, the artificial intelligence can make forecasts about what is likely to happen in the future, okay? So that's really all AI does, right? And that's all any AI does, is it takes a look at what's happened in the past, correlates it with some timing event, and then based on future timing events, because I know where Jupiter is going to be next week, next month, next year. We know all that. That's one of the reasons why I chose to work with planets, because we know exactly where they're going to be at any day in the future. So based on that, we can make forecasts that take into account past behavior of price when these astro events happen. So I hope that makes sense. But yeah, it's been quite a journey to build this out. And the statistics that I track indicate it's like if you were to make a random guess as to whether it was going to make a pivot on this day or a pivot on that day and compare it to my AI would be 4 to 5 times more accurate than random.
Okay, so that means I need to ask you one question that one of my a person that I know that is by trade an astrologist, and so I asked him, okay, can you take a look on what Blair is doing, you know, that you are sharing on your YouTube channel, and tell me what you think, you know, because I don't have any experience in trading and I don't have any experience in astrology. So, but you have at least the experience in astrology, and so you can comment on that. part. And so, and then he had a look, and he said, yeah, okay, it makes sense from the astrology point of view. Yes, I understand what Blair is showing on his charts. And but then he had a question about this, that let's take as someone who is a total beginner. So it's going to take some time for that person to get into, for example, time trades and understand how things work, and understand how to read the charts and how to really use this fishing gear that you're presenting and making possible. And then he thought, okay, so it's going to take some time and some effort. What about if a person, the same person, just gets aware of that there are planet cycles and maybe have a little bit of education in astrology and train oneself in asking like more precise questions to artificial intelligence, like on whatever platform that the person is using, would the person get kind of the same insight into these pivot points that you mentioned, or something else? What do you think?
I think I think one of the biggest values of time trades is frankly the time savings, right? So absolutely someone could go and do everything you mentioned. They could go and educate themselves on planets and time cycles, but to implement that on a trading chart on TradingView would require an awful lot of manual effort, manual calculation, right? So time trades can do in seconds what would take hours, what would literally take hours, okay? So yeah, and I know there's also open source options available as well, right? But I mean, it's a market, and people can choose to use what they want to use. But I think one of the biggest value adds of time trades is frankly the time savings, right? And also the fact that there is an unbiased AI there as well that can act as a second opinion, right? So you can do your manual analysis, you can come up with an opinion, and the AI is always there to give an unbiased second opinion to either validate or invalidate, what you're thinking. But absolutely, like the time trades is best used by people that are educated a little bit on astro cycles and astrology and that, because then they can get the most of it, right? And whenever I start talking to new customers about time trades, I start with the simplest possible cycles and the easiest possible price levels, right? And these are very, very straightforward and easy to apply to your chart so that people can immediately see the value of it. And then they're willing to take the next step and maybe learn a little bit more about, okay, what planets are influencing this coin or this stock, and how do I represent those on the chart so that I know what to do when price hits one of the lines on the chart. So what I'm trying to do with this is make analysis routine and structured and predictable, so that it's not a dark art, so that it's not some secret. I want to bring these techniques out into the light so that everyone can benefit from them. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We need to start rounding up, and I want to ask you, what was one example that you could give us that you can remember in your life when you were using, maybe for the first time, money more intentionally, maybe a long time ago before you started trading or whatever. Do you remember like certain moment where using money more intentionally created more freedom in your life?
Oh, wow, that's quite that question. Using money more intentionally created more freedom in my life. Um, well, I mean, it's a different world now, but I grew up and went to university in, the early 1990s. And, at that point in time, there was a real good return on investment from university education. So I got a computer science degree. I graduated in 1993. And that has resulted in, I've been very lucky in my career. A lot of it had to do with the time that the time that I graduated at, right? It's a different world in 1993 than it is in 2025, right? Um,
Yeah.
and computer science degree back then was, it was very different than now. But I was lucky in that that investment in time and money and my degree resulted in a very good career in the software business. So, I mean, I think that's the first example that comes to mind. It might not be the best example, Laura, but it's kind of the first answer that comes to mind about creating freedom. And through that that multi-year investment in myself, I have been able to um, create the freedom to go and work in different countries. I worked in the United States in the Bay Area for 5 years. I've worked in Vancouver, Canada, and now I'm working here out of Calgary, Canada. So I've that's created a fair bit of freedom for me. Is it the kind of freedom I want at the moment? Not really. I'd rather uh, I I I think we're all working towards our own sort of definition of freedom, right? And in my perfect world in the future, I'd be able to, uh, you know, I wouldn't need to work, and I would be able to, focus on my passion, which is building out time trades and talking to people like you about it.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anything else you would like to say to our audience before we end the conversation?
Um, Yeah, I mean, just I think we talked a lot about trading and money, and I think it's important for everyone to understand that, like you're richer than you think. Like you have a lot of capability, and people I think get stuck in a mindset of lack, and I think it's important that you approach the world with a mindset of abundance, right? And I think when you do that, you'll end up with better outcomes, right? Because a funny thing about money is the more you want it, the less you'll have it. Like you need to kind of relax and attract it and not kind of tense up and think about it all the time. So yeah,
Do you think that you have managed this skill in attracting money? Have you
it's
felt
still
the
it's
vibe?
it's um it's honestly it's still a skill I'm learning, to be honest. And like I need to remind myself of this every day. I really do. And I think this goes to the psychological impact of money, right? And I think it's something that people talk about very, very rarely. And yet there's so much of our behavior is motivated by that, by the emotions around us, right? So I think it's important to drag that topic out into the light as well.
Yes, absolutely. But for today, I thank you very, very much for coming and sharing your work and thoughts and everything that you did today. And it's going to be great to listen to you on the Non Conformist series. So, dear audience, thank you so much for listening to us and tuning in. And don't forget to join us on December 29th and 30th for the Non Conformist series. And the tickets are available on anarchapulco.com. Blair's webpage address is in the comments below, as well as Anarchapulco's webpage address. And for now, it's peace, love, and financial anarchy, friends. Thank you.